What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla -2. We're still rocking with the Godzilla -2 title until we get further confirmation of what the title is. Welcome to another Godzilla -2 theory video and discussion based on Godzilla -1. In this one, because I had so much fun doing the last discussion video where we talked about the potential of two Godzillas being in a Godzilla -1 sequel based on some evidence in the first movie, I really liked the discussion of just who left the scars on Godzilla's neck on the Odo Island Godzilla, and I wanted to continue that based on your guys' theories and reactions from the comments of that previous video. So in this one, I'm going to be going over the most popular commented theories and giving my opinions on them and my takes on them, and to see if we can uncover more evidence as to who it might be, and I actually think we've got a pretty solid theory in this one. So let's do it. That is right, everybody. In this video, we're going to be talking about what kaiju left the scars and scratches on Godzilla's neck at the start of Godzilla -1 before he evolves into the King of the Monsters. Just to give another quick recap here in case you're unaware, Godzilla starts out Godzilla -1 as the Godzillasaurus. That's actually not what that is. It's not like the Godzillasaurus from the 1991 film Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. It's really just the pre-evolved version, okay? So Godzilla starts out in his pre-evolved state. He is a completely naturally occurring creature in the -1 universe. That's a very important thing. It's also very important to note that director Takashi Yamazaki confirms that Godzilla already had his regenerative capabilities before he got hit with the nuke. The reason Godzilla evolves into the final version he does is because his regeneration tries to repair him after he's hit with Operation Crossroads, but it goes haywire. Because of the radiation, it can't stop, and so he mutates like a cancer until he's enormous. But that's really important because Godzilla starts Godzilla -1 with scars all over his neck, and so that raises the question, who put them there, and is that going to be the monster Godzilla fights in the next movie? Director Takashi Yamazaki has said he would like to have Godzilla fight another monster if he's able to do a Godzilla -1 sequel, and at the moment, with us knowing Yamazaki will return to direct Toho's next Godzilla movie, it seems like he will. So let's get into it. In this video, we're going to go over the top 14 theories as to what it could be based on the previous video, and I'll give my thoughts and opinions on each one as we go. Starting out with the least likely, that is Ebirah. I saw a couple comments about Ebirah, mostly because he's a very naturally occurring monster. I think I also used an image of him in that last video, which maybe is what inspired it in so many people's minds, but Ebirah is a naturally occurring monster in the original Showa continuity, and so a lot of people are thinking maybe he's the monster that'll show up. Of course, he's not that wild for the -1 universe. I don't think it's Ebirah for many reasons. Number one, he's just not popular enough. Number two, Ebirah, while being one of the more realistic monsters in the Showa universe, is also one of the sillier ones, and one of the ones it's hardest to take seriously, so I think that kind of disqualifies him. And then number three, Ebirah would not have left scratch marks all over Godzilla's neck. They would have been giant clamp marks from his giant pincers. They would not have been the scratches we see. It just wouldn't have been that way. It would have been way more aggressive and way more obvious that Godzilla had been attacked by a giant crustacean. Number two, and as much as I like this one, as fun as this one would be, I just don't see a way that this would possibly work, is Gorosaurus. So a lot of people were questioning if it could be Gorosaurus. Of course, that's another very sort of realistic monster, just a dinosaur that got enlarged. And Gorosaurus and Godzilla do have so many similarities that the two of them having some sort of rivalry would be a really fun thing to explore, and they've never fought before, which would be another reason why it'd be awesome. And I don't think so. I don't think so. Gorosaurus is, again, too obscure of a monster, and you'll see that's a recurring theme throughout these picks. Gorosaurus is just simply too obscure of a monster, and he also, if we're just going to take it at face value, Gorosaurus relies more on kicking rather than scratching. Gorosaurus is all legs, so he wouldn't have to scratch Godzilla up. He'd kick him. He's just not built for up-close combat in order to leave all the cuts all over Godzilla's neck, so I don't think it's Gorosaurus. The next one, and boy was this a popular theory, Titanosaurus. Fans have loved Titanosaurus since his first appearance in 1975 and have been begging for him to return, and I don't think he will, but I like the idea because it very well could be Titanosaurus. Depending on if it's more more of a classic version of the character, or a singular point styled version of the character, of course that was Godzilla Aquatilis, he would have fingernails, so he would be able to scratch Godzilla up. And of course we know that Godzilla is a sea monster who spends most of his time in the ocean. I don't think it's gonna be Titanosaurus, however, for a couple reasons. Well, I like the idea of maybe Titanosaurus being a water rival to Godzilla. Godzilla is such a sea monster in the -1 universe that I don't think there's as much of a interesting dynamic there to have Titanosaurus be his opponent. Also, again, and I'm sorry to say it, as much as he's a fan favorite, Titanosaurus is too obscure of a monster to bring back. He's just not worthy of Godzilla's opponent in the sequel. I don't think it's gonna be Titanosaurus, as fun as I think that one is. The next one, I really like this one, and this one actually, if I could pick, this would be one of the ones that I'd put in like my top 5 list of I think it'd be awesome, and that's Varan. Varan the Unbelievable. He's such a throwback monster, and that might be one of the reasons Yamazaki likes him. Varan, of course, was gonna be used in the original idea for GMK. That did get changed, but GMK is one of Yamazaki's favorite Godzilla movies, and it's one that's very influential to him, so maybe he'd want to pay tribute to GMK by bringing back Varan. Of course, the ending of Godzilla -1, I believe, also pays some tribute to the Japanese version of Varan, a movie that I still haven't seen. I've only seen the US version, but I believe the ending of Godzilla -1 with Operation Watsumi does pay a big tribute to Varan the Unbelievable. He's also another monster that's fairly realistic, and you could believe that a natural creature that is Varan could believably be irradiated into a Godzilla-sized monster to take him on in the sequel. He would be able to leave the claw marks, and he would be an interesting opponent for Godzilla to fight, as he has both land and air capabilities. However, the reason that it isn't Varan, again, you know it, it's unfortunately because he's just too obscure of a pick. I don't see Varan working as the monster Godzilla goes up against in the sequel. We really have to look back at Toho's filmography here. Whenever Toho launches a new Godzilla continuity, they always wind up reusing the same monsters over and over again. In the Heisei series, they wanted to introduce a bunch of new monsters, but after the disappointment of Godzilla vs. Biollante at the box office, they pivoted into bringing back fan favorites, and they stayed that way for the most part through the whole series. Of course, they did have some new inclusions like Space Godzilla and Destroya, but that was at the very end, after they had already established themselves. In the Millennium era, they tried it with some other brand new monsters like Orga and Megaguirus, although technically Megaguirus was a sort of returning monster. Those films didn't do as well as Toho wanted, which is why they didn't allow Varan, Anguirus, and Baragon to be the monsters Godzilla took on in GMK. It's why they swapped them out from Mothra and King Ghidorah, two much more popular monsters, and then went the route of just adding in famous monsters like Mechagodzilla for the rest of the Millennium era. I don't think they're gonna make the same mistake again. I don't think they're gonna have Godzilla fight Varan in this next movie. I just don't think it's a big enough sell for Toho at this point in time. Which is really important because the next one would be so fantastic, and that is Baragon. Yamazaki loves GMK. It is a movie that inspired him so heavily while making Godzilla -1. There are so many parallels between the two films. Baragon is a fan favorite in GMK, but I think the most telling thing there is that Toho left him out of the marketing for the movie. He's not even in the title. He's in the poster, in the trailer, but he's not in the title. And it's because Toho knows that Baragon's not enough on his own. But I like the idea that it could be. I feel like Baragon could have easily scratched Godzilla up and gotten away because he has the burrowing capabilities that Godzilla doesn't. Although I feel like they would have mentioned some earthquakes or something on Odo if it was Baragon. I feel like there'd be some allusion to the fact that he's there because that's a monster that is quite distracting. He's an easy one to spot because of the fact that he's got that earthquake ability, although maybe he hadn't developed that yet. I just feel like there would be a little more setup to it. But again, he is too obscure and he is just not quite a worthy adversary for Godzilla in a sequel. That gets us into the next few. Now, we have already talked about this guy, and I do think he's fairly likely. He was one of the ones I spotlighted in the last video, and that is Rodan. But I wanted to put extra emphasis on him only because you guys in the comment sections brought up some interesting things that I had failed to mention in the first video, so I want to add those points because they strengthen the argument. First of all, Rodan and Godzilla are both very territorial creatures. Of course, that's what their entire beef was about in 1964's Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Yamazaki has already used Rodan in Godzilla the Ride, and that was one of the monsters he picked and he wanted to use and include, so it's clearly a monster he likes quite a bit. Yamazaki loves Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, stating it's one of his favorite Godzilla films, and that it was his first Godzilla film, and the one that got him into monster filmmaking, so including Rodan could be a way to pay tribute to that. Also, and this is most most importantly, Rodan is a very popular monster in the Toho mythology and is very popular in the United States after Godzilla King of the Monsters, meaning he has a big international appeal. While I don't know if he's necessarily enough for Godzilla to go up against in a sequel from Toho's perspective, I actually do think Rodan's one of the best picks they could do for the box office, given his long-standing popularity, how old he is as a character, and the fact that he could support his own solo film at one point. So I do think Rodan has the juice for some box office success, and I think that's a very likely monster. Next up, this one's again one that we talked about in the last video, one that I think is very likely, and one that I don't know if he absolutely has the box office appeal, but I think he has something more important than that, and that's Anguirus, and what he has is legacy. Anguirus, of course, was the first monster Godzilla fought, and I could see Toho allowing Anguirus to be in this sequel on those grounds alone. Anguirus and Godzilla are both territorial creatures. That's of course what their original fight was about back in 1955. This would again be another throwback to GMK, as Anguirus was originally going to be one of Godzilla's opponents in that film, and again, Yamazaki loves that movie. And here's something that's very important. In a Toho Kingdom interview with director Takashi Yamazaki held back in March, I'll cover this in a Godzilla -1 news roundup pretty soon, Yamazaki directly acknowledges Anguirus. He states that he finds it very interesting how many people want to see him back and how many people love that character. He says he finds it most interesting how associated his film is with Godzilla Raids Again, specifically because his film is so related to Godzilla 1954. Now, the way in which he says it in this Toho Kingdom interview kind of makes it seem like he's not considering Anguirus, but he does state that he hasn't decided who the monster was going to be that Godzilla would fight in March, meaning he was considering it. Anguirus is a fairly popular monster in Toho's lineup, although he's more of a B-lister, but that's okay, because I do think that legacy aspect of it is enough to sell the movie. Next up, and this one's one where it's like, wait, if we're talking about obscure monsters, how could this even be a possibility? And that's a brand new monster. I think the fact that it would be a new monster kind of has a certain appeal to it that you can't get by including an older monster. Is it a new monster that Godzilla fought? One that we've never seen before, and so it's going to be impossible to speculate on what it could be? Possibly. I do think possibly. Again, the reason I don't think that's going to be what happens is because would Toho want to take the risk in introducing a brand new monster and maybe not getting the box office return they hope, the same way they did with Godzilla 2000 or Godzilla vs. Biollante? I don't know. Are they like cautious of history, or are they like, this time we got it? That's going to be the question. I don't know. Maybe the Legendary movies have inspired them, and that Legendary has found some success in introducing new monsters. So who knows? Next up, this is actually one of the most popular theories on the video, and it's also one of the least exciting, but I want to address it, and that's, is Godzilla just injuring himself? Does Godzilla even have the scars because he fought another monster, or is it because of the way he attacks the Watchtower at the start of -1? I don't think so. Godzilla smacks his head into the Watchtower, yes, and so I can understand why people would think that maybe is the thing that harmed him, especially if we know he has a regeneration factor. So wouldn't it be healed over if it was from another monster? Not necessarily. It depends on how recently Godzilla got into a fight and how slow his naturally occurring regenerative capabilities are. They are juiced up by the nuke. They aren't created by the nuke, they are amplified by it. So he already has that ability, but now he's gaining the ability to regen faster. So maybe he just regens fairly slowly before he's nuked. Now importantly, Godzilla hits the Watchtower with the top of his head and then the left side of his body. So I don't think the marks would be all across his neck and on his shoulder. I think that you would see them on his face, on the top of his head, and on the other side of his body, where you don't see any. I think the fact that some are fleshy and some aren't show that they're at different stages of healing, which also to me indicates this isn't from Godzilla attacking the Watchtower, as wouldn't they be all more recent than that? Wouldn't they all be opened up if it was from something that immediate? I don't know. I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's from the Watchtower. I also don't think they match up. Like, they are scratches. They're clearly scratches. Some of them even crisscross. That's not something you get from slamming your head into the Watchtower. I don't think that's the case. I think it is another monster. I do think they were added for a reason. Next up is another Godzilla. Yeah, that's my #1 theory from the last video, and I'm going to keep it as my #1 monster for this video as well. I think the idea of another Godzilla is very important because Toho has been attempting to make a Godzilla vs. Godzilla film in some form since the Heisei series. The idea has been floating around since at least 1994, taking on many different iterations over time, whether it be a space Godzilla or something else, or a ghost Godzilla even. The idea has been floating around for years. Toho has wanted to do it for years. Of course, there was that very popular Godzilla Zero theory where Godzilla would fight another monster. It was so popular that it shows there is power in that idea. I know it might not be the most exciting thing for some fans of Anguirus or Rodan or King Ghidorah or whatever. I know it might not be the most exciting thing, but it would be something different and it would be something fresh. And I like that idea quite a bit. One theory I saw is that maybe it's mating scars from another Godzilla. It's entirely possible. And a reason I bring that up is because in that same Toho Kingdom interview that was held back in March, Mir Jahangir, my friend over there, asks Yamazaki directly if Godzilla is the last of his kind, and Yamazaki explains that he doesn't want to give a definitive answer to that question. He wants to leave that as a mystery to be explored in the future. So it's a deliberate mystery in the movie Godzilla -1 that is left open to interpretation. Of course, in the last video I mentioned how Shikishima brings up that if this is the same Godzilla, then he would have had to grow bigger in size. The if being in question, meaning that there could be more Godzillas out there. I did see some comments wondering if it's even the same Godzilla in the first place, if the Odo Godzilla is the one from Castle Bravo. It is. The novelization confirms it, Yamazaki confirms it. It is the same Godzilla. Castle Bravo, what am I talking about? Operation Crossroads, my bad guys. This one's not it, but I was happy to see some comments about it, and so I figured I'd throw it in here up at the top as an honorable mention, and that's that it's the Gargantuas, and I'd like to say that if luck exists, then it will be, but it won't be because luck doesn't exist. As much as we need those beautiful bastards back, it is not their time, and I don't think they will be in the sequel, but boy would I love it if they were. Alright guys, top 3 here, and this is a really important one. This one I actually think might be the key, and it's just a deep sea creature. Not a monster, a deep sea creature like a squid or a shark. Godzilla is a deep sea hunter, and he was known to swim all over the Pacific. Of course, he winds up in Bikini Atoll, far away from Odo Island, and that's where he's mutated. He spends most of his time at sea and not on Odo, and so it's entirely possible that during Godzilla's many travels at sea, he was attacked by a deep sea creature like a squid, an octopus, or a shark, or something like that. I don't know if squids and sharks can cause lacerations like the ones we see Godzilla come on shore with, but I do know they can chew up whales and leave whales with all sorts of scratches and scars all over them, so I do think it's very possible that it could be something like that, and it could just be used to imply that Godzilla's life is a little rough. Number 2, and I hate this one, I also think this one's maybe the most likely to happen, and that's number 2 is just straight up, we never find out. They never address it, and they never give us an answer. And that leads us into like the number 1 theory, and it would be that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just used to imply Godzilla had a very hard life. It's just used to imply Godzilla has some age and some experience under his belt. And it doesn't matter because Godzilla's fighting Noriko. That's a theory that everybody loves, that she's gonna mutate into a giant monster and she's gonna fight Godzilla. That would make me so depressed, but I could see it happening. Of course, the way that movie leaves off, I could see it happening. And so maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we don't need to spend time exploring what Godzilla was up to before the events of -1 if we're gonna be focused on something that immediate after -1. If we're gonna be unpacking the consequences of something like that, then we really don't have time to dive into where did Godzilla get the scars? Who knows? The past. It doesn't matter. I don't like that theory. I want to find out. Yamazaki gave Godzilla scars for a reason. He left these mysteries in the film for a reason. I like the idea that we'll get an answer to it. And that's why I'm thinking it's either going to be another Godzilla, a deep sea creature like a squid, or it's going to be our boy Anguirus. Those are my bets. Those are my hopes. What about you guys? After this video, do you have a different takeaway? Do you have any monsters you think it is or that you would like it to be? Comment below and let me know. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions down below. I had so much fun doing these videos. I love doing theory videos. I love doing speculation videos. They're just a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you guys bringing back the good old-fashioned vibes on the last one. I hope we can continue that on this one. Alrighty, everybody. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It's through the support of the patrons that I'm able to make videos like this for you. And if you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below, where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man, out.